Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my first impressions on this knife. This is the Viper Katla. The Katla is a Vox design. Obviously it's made by Viper Knives, and it is a really interesting piece to me. So this knife was not on my radar at all, just like a month or two ago. And then one of my buddies, MB Wild, who I talk to a lot on Instagram, picked one of these up and started raving about it. And then a couple other friends of mine, all kind of in that same group chat, frankly, picked up their own Katlas, and I started to just hear good things from several different people that I trust. And it made me more and more curious, and so I was planning on picking one of these up, but the variant I wanted was out of stock when I looked, and luckily, my buddy Brandon, aka Everyday Minimalist, who will be linked down below, sent me his to check out. So, I appreciate it, Brandon. I'm enjoying this knife so far. This is a compelling offering to me. So, I don't own, at the moment, any other knives that are Viper. I think I've had several knives that have been manufactured by them. In fact, I'm pretty sure Giant Mouse uses them for knives like the Grand and the Biblio, which I have. So I'm not unfamiliar with Viper knives, but I also don't have like a ton of experience with them. One of the reasons why I haven't owned very many of their knives is because oftentimes, at least like a year or two ago, when I found myself shopping for like a broader range of knives, and I was less specific about what I wanted, and I'd just be like looking through catalogs of what was available online. The knives I'd see from Viper oftentimes just had N690 steel, whereas many of the competitively priced knives had better steel offerings. And so I guess that's probably the biggest reason at that time as to why I didn't get many of them, or any of them. And this one is in M390. It has green micarta scales, nested liners, copper backspacer, and pivot collars, a loop-over style deep carry clip which is nested down into the scale and uses countersunk hardware. It's doing a lot of kind of my favorite things. It has multiple deployment methods, so we've got a flipper tab, which is actually dialed really well. The detent is great for it. Then we have thumb studs, which I can thumb deploy, and I can middle finger flick it really well with the thumb studs. So in terms of its fidgetiness, it's awesome. You can see the action. It's not like stupid drop shutty, but it's really smooth and doesn't take much coaxing to come down. So there's a lot that's happening here that's like what I look for. It's like what I want out of knives. The size is great. I want to say it's a little under 3.5-inch blade. It's got a crown spine. I love micarta. So yeah, there's a lot of good that's happening here for me and what I look for. Now, I've also found right off the bat there's a couple of things that I'm not crazy about on it. All of those positives already being stated, right? So there's a couple things that I'm like a little bit nitpicky about so far. But I've only carried this knife about a day and a half so far. So this is the first impressions. I'm still going to keep gathering some thoughts to get ready for a full review. But I figured I'd do a little bit of a check-in on it and just kind of talk about where I'm at right now with it. So let's talk about those little nitpicks that I have and just kind of see where we go from there. I don't want to get too in-depth today because I want to experience this knife more before I do my full review, like I said. But the nitpicks I have, I guess the biggest one, frankly, is ergonomically. I love the size, the profile, a lot about this knife ergonomically, but I don't love right here, this corner, these corners here and here on this edge of the micarta. They're just, if these were rounded like it is, let me see if I can show you. See how it's knocked down right in here? If they did that same kind of like radius up through here and knocked this corner off, I bet this knife would feel amazing. But I just feel that corner so much, especially this kind of inside one where my hand is contacting on this side. Come on. It feels like a corner. It doesn't feel smooth. Whereas most of the rest of the knife feels pretty smooth and ergonomic to me. And I just find, especially if I grip hard on it, it's not that it's necessarily a hot spot, but paired with that kind of external corner, the inner side of that scale is also pretty, sharp is the wrong word, but it's an edge. There's no real like chamfering or anything that's done there. So when I grip down on this knife, I just feel corner here, and then internally, if like the meat of the pad of my finger goes in there, it's also just, it's not comfortable to me. So if this was my knife, if I had purchased this for me and I wanted to make it work for me long term, then I would be getting out a Dremel or some sandpaper and knocking that down. I imagine it wouldn't take much to really just knock like that, the peak of that corner off, and I think it would feel better. And I'd do it internally as well. Then I bet this knife would really shine for me ergonomically. But it just feels like, with all of the other steps that were taken on this one, I'm curious, maybe it's just my hands that are feeling that way on the material. But if other people are feeling that too, it feels like such an easy thing to address, and I don't know how they wouldn't have caught it. But it could just be my hands. Ergonomics are different for everybody, so I can't pretend that everyone's even going to feel that. But yeah, that's really the biggest thing. Other than that, this one isn't perfectly on center, and I've tried adjusting it a little bit. It's been difficult for me to get it centered. Even I've just found that like tightening the pivot down all the way, I haven't even changed the centering, so maybe I need to take it all the way apart. Brendan said I could. I'm tempted to do that and see if I can get it perfectly centered, but that's a small thing because right now it's not rubbing on the side or anything, and the action, like I said, is excellent. It's a really, really good action. These, I forget, I looked for one to buy myself, so I should know the price, but they're under $200 if I remember correct. And for a sub $200 knife with M390, this action's really good. The detent is tuned well, the bearings glide well, everything about it feels nice. And if I don't look at that blade centering, it even feels like nice and tight, right? I don't have blade play forward and back, side to side, none. Like I've adjusted it to where there's no blade play in here at all, and it's still really smooth. It's excellent. But it's just like that hair off, which is a little bit kind of frustrating to me. But yeah, I guess it's really kind of just those two things. One thing that I do mention on a lot of knives that do this, but I'll mention it here as well, it baffles me why it's so prolific to use a loop over style deep carry clip and then position it not at the end of the knife. If you look at where this clip is, you'll see we have a clip that is exactly what I want out of a clip. It is countersunk into the scale material. The screws are countersunk into it. It is a perfectly flush surface under there. It's loop over style. It is what I want out of a pocket clip. But instead of pushing it to go all the way to the butt end of the knife, they've just moved it in so that even with a deep carry clip, you've got that much knife sticking out of your pocket. I don't understand that. Let me see if I have another knife here that will illustrate. I have other knives that don't have deep carry clips. I don't know if there's a good one next to me. Let's look at this. So this is a Monterey Bay Knives EZC that was loaned to me by Lefty EDC. Not a deep carry clip at all. But you'll see, if I put my fingers up to where it ends, this much knife sticks out of your pocket without the deep carry clip. It's not loop over style. It's not supposed to carry deep. Now this one is supposed to carry deep, and guess what? To me, that looks like the same amount of knife that sticks out of your pocket. What's the point of a deep carry clip then? You might as well have mounted your clip all the way back here and not used a deep carry one. I don't know, I wish that wasn't the thing on so many knives, and I just keep seeing it. And it seems like just about every manufacturer is doing that. It's almost like it's rare, at least lately, with the knives that have come across my table, for them to be positioned all the way to the end of the knife, and I just don't get why. I don't know. It seems like a simple thing to me. Like, anyways. So, those are my nitpicks. I wish These scales were contoured a little bit more, specifically right up here at the front. I wish that clip was moved back, and I wish that it was easier to get right on center. But everything else about it is so good. The action is phenomenal. The materials offered on it are like what I would pick. The finish on the blade is really nice. I do think there's a little bit more billboarding than I would personally prefer. The Viper Katla branded all big on that flat. And then we've got more on this side with the Vox and M390. It's not egregious. There's certainly knives that have way more billboarding, but I'd prefer it without. But this blade shape, this tanto, is gorgeous. It's almost like a drop point, but it also has kind of like a clip point thing going on. And it's just classy. It's not too busy, but it looks just great to me. I like the profile of the handle. I think this knife looks really good. I love that the back spacers is a little touch of copper, just offsets really well with the OD green, and it's patinaing over time. It's just a really cool knife, and it comes at a price that I think is more than fair for what's being offered on it. The value proposition here is really solid. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to carry it some more, use it some more, and see if ultimately I just kind of end up forgiving those little nitpicks that I have about it, or whether I just view it as a knife that's almost great, or whether I decide that I really want to get one and modify the scales a little bit, and then it's greater. You know, I don't know what I'm going to come out of this thinking and wanting to do, but anyway, those are my first impressions of the Viper Katla, which is of course a Jesper Voxnays design. I like this knife in so many ways, and I'm curious myself to see how I come out of it feeling. Thank you again to Brandon, Everyday Minimalist, for loaning this to me. Again, I will link down to Brandon's channel in the description. If you haven't checked him out already, please do. He's an awesome dude who's crushing it, not only with YouTube content, but also I'll link to his Instagram where he's crushing it, and his TikTok where he's like massive. He's actually TikTok famous, and I don't even try at TikTok, so it's cool that he is bringing some EDC presence over there. Really cool dude. So check him out if you haven't, and thank you all for watching. I'll see you on the next one.